Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I am creating a round art journal from an old book. So here's a list of the tools I used: an old book, a cutting mat, a craft knife, a pencil, and a pot lid, but you can use any round item that fits your book cover. So I start out, I should mention first that I left 4 pages in, took 4 pages out, left 4 pages in, took 4 pages out, all the way through the book. So those are the pages that I took out because I know the book is going to get fat, and just going to alleviate that right from the get-go. So there I'm just showing you what I used. You can use a plate, a bowl, anything that fits top to bottom on your book. And then you want to start with a fresh sharp blade in your craft knife, and I just positioned that pot lid on the bowl and just marked around it with the pencil, so I had a guideline to cut on. And I thought about laying it flat like that, but the spine would have been in my way, so I just closed it and started that way. And as you're cutting, just take your time and go slow. Once you get that first cut made, it's easy then to get your knife back down in that same groove and continue cutting until you are able to cut all the way through the book cover. There, I got off my track a little bit, and I'm going to have a little boo-boo right there that it'll sand off. I didn't get way off, but I was a little out of the track. So just followed my line and went all the way around. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do when I got to the spine of the book. If I did it again, I wouldn't continue that curve at the very bottom. I would have gone straight across and just left the book lined up with the top and bottom of the spine, but it's okay. So I think it was like maybe 4 times around and I got through the cover, and then I just did a little cleanup there on the top and bottom edges to get it cut all the way into up to the spine. And then I just took a sanding block and just lightly sanded the edges just to smooth off any bumps and little stray spots that maybe didn't get cut cleanly. And it turned out pretty good. So now I'm going to follow the same procedure really, and I'm just going to use the cover as my guide, and I'm going to cut the pages out. And I quickly realized after I made a few cuts here that as this book gets thicker, it's going to be harder to close because the pages are exactly even with the cover. So I had second thoughts and thought, geez, the pages should probably be a little bit smaller than my cover is. And every once in a while you'll see I pick up those tiny little embroidery scissors and trim any stray edges or anything that didn't get cut cleanly. But here's where I thought, okay, I need to make my pages smaller. So I opened the book up and brought my pot lid back in and marked the pages so that I could cut them a little bit smaller than what the cover is cut at. And at first it caused me some problems because now I'm trying to recut pages that I already cut. So I was getting a lot of crummy edges, trying to get them lined up and even. But once I got on track, then it went a lot faster when I started cutting into the pages that hadn't already been cut. it took quite a while to do. I don't know exactly how many pages I have in here now that I took. Started out, I think there was 168 pages maybe in the book altogether. And so I probably took half of those out. And I may end up taking more out as I go along, but we'll see. Depends on how fat it gets. And I will probably use my matte medium and glue some of those pages together to make them sturdier pages. So they're thicker. So I've gotten to the back of the book now. And just again, grabbing those little scissors and evening up any little edges that maybe got double cut a little bit or had little notches in them. So now it's time to cut the back cover, and I'm just running my pencil. I was going to run my pencil along the front cover, which is what I should have done. But I had second thoughts and I opened the book and I went around the pages to make my guideline. And if I'd stopped to think for 2 seconds, I would have realized that's not the same size as the cover because I made the pages smaller. But that's what I did initially. And then I start to make my cut. And it didn't take too long before it dawned on me that this is wrong. Fortunately, I thought of it before I got too far along. But I did make that initial cut. And then it was like, wait a minute. That's wrong. So I was going to bring the pot lid back in, but then I wasn't sure if I use that, am I still going to mark it exactly where it needs to be marked? And then, you know, light bulb moment. It's like, just use the front cover as your guide, and then they'll both be the same size. So I don't know why it took me so long for that to dawn on me. I did start out, I was going to do that, and then for whatever reason, I didn't do it. So I do have that partial cut there at the top. And I'm going to have to try to line up where I started that with the actual place where I want to cut it. And then that's what I did. So I kind of went from the top to the outside middle and then from the bottom to the outside middle until I get it scored all the way through. And then kind of rounded that edge off there, but it turned out okay. The only thing then that I did notice, and I think I'll show you here in a second, is as I went along, my pages got shorter. So you can see they're not exactly round now because one side's a little shorter than the other, but it's okay. It'll be fine. And I'm showing you how they kind of bevel back toward the back of the book. Decorate this front cover, and I'm going to start with some plaster wrap, and I like to use rigid wrap. It comes like this. It comes on a roll, fast drying, non-toxic, microwavable if you wanted to make it hot, I guess, for like sculptural type things. So as it shows, you just cut it, you wet it and shape it, but I'm just going to use it flat on here and then let it dry. I am going to take my rings off because it's real messy, which is part of the fun, I guess.
So first thing to do is get it wet. I'm going to do this piece first. I already have the pieces cut, so I'm just dipping it in my water basin, which I could bring closer, I guess. Just kind of smush the water through it. Okay. And then I'm going to get it right at the edge, and then I can start smoothing it out. It will stretch a little bit, but not a lot, so you want to pretty much get it where you want it before you start smoothing it down. And then as you rub, that plaster fills in the holes in that gauzy material. It's sort of like back in my day, I'm not sure what they use now, but I'm pretty sure they don't use this. They use some kind of other material. But this is similar to what they used to cast bones with, like broken bones. If you broke your arm or whatever, they would wrap it with this plaster stuff. So there's the first piece. I'm going to try to not get everything totally messed up here. Now let's see, this goes this way. I cut this, no, it goes that way, so that I could wrap it over the spine too. So this is going to butt right up against that one and hopefully fit. So we will see how good a job I did. It makes a funny, you probably can't hear that. When you first dip it in, it makes kind of a crackling noise. Like snap, crackle, and pop. Alright, this way, right? Get it on there right. And if you wanted a different type of plaster, you can buy Venetian plaster, like at Home Depot and Lowe's, those types of places. I'm sure some of the art stores probably carry it too, but it just comes in a can, but it's fairly expensive. I have a gap here, which I didn't think I did when I had it on there a minute ago. I didn't notice a gap, but that's okay. I can always piece a piece in there or just leave it alone, because I will put paint or something over this, so it won't be that noticeable. I'm just trying to get it smooth so it'll dry decently. And as it sits for a couple minutes, it starts to kind of thicken. So I can probably just pull some of that plaster down there, just get a little texture down there. I want to make sure that that is pushed down into where the spine bends, though, so that it doesn't crack. And it might crack anyways, but if it does, I'll deal with it then. I wouldn't let this stuff dry on my hands either. Every so often I'm wiping my hands. I'm going to wipe this. But when you take this out of the package, you get, well, here, I'll show you. If I sit this here and move it around a little bit, you see the plaster dust. So it's right there. It gets kind of messy. But sometimes messy is fun, right? I am going to see what happens when I dry this with my heat tool. I've used this before, and I can't remember if I dried it with the heat tool or if I let it air dry. Okay, this is pretty dry. I partially dried it with the heat tool, then I let it sit for a while, and then I hit it with the heat tool some more, so it feels a little bit cool, but I think it's dry enough to work on top of. So just as a precaution, I am going to put a coat of just clear gesso over this and hope and pray that it doesn't lift the rigid wrap. Hopefully it won't. I have a couple tips for you guys too. Kind of reminded me as I was sort of picking the dried stuff out of the grooves in the edge of my jar. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I have a lot of new subscribers and it's definitely worth a reminder. I have one of these little tiny jars of Vaseline in my studio, and when I'm done, I do it not every time I use it, but maybe every fourth or fifth time I use it. Take a little Vaseline on the end of your finger and run it around those, what do you call those? The ridges, the grooves, the runners, whatever, where your lid connects with your jar. And that will help keep your media from sticking and drying in those ridges, and then your jar won't be hard to open. You know, sometimes it gets dried in there, your lid gets stuck to the jar and you can't get it open, and you're running it under hot water or you're banging it on the desk or whatever. That will prevent that. So just a little tip. Definitely worth, these things are like $1 or something. Definitely worth having. That little thing will last forever, because just using that little bit around the edge. Why can't I think of what those, can't think of what those ridges are called, but anyway. Alright, I'm going to dry this. Okay, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do here. I pulled out 3 shades of blue. I have Prussian blue. This is the fluid acrylic. And then I have cerulean blue hue, which is a high flow. And I have the turquoise phthalo, which is also a high flow. And I'm going to start with the, and I just have a sponge. I'm going to sponge around the outside edge first. And as usual, I'm just playing, you guys. I have no clue other than I'm doing this right now. Outside of that, I don't know what I'm doing, where I'm going with it. I'm just going. I'm going to grab a scruffy brush, and just kind of pounce down into the spine here a little bit, the bend. Get that color in there too. want to take too much time because I'd kind of like this to still be wet. Now I'm going to take the same sponge. I'm just going to move it, but I'm going to go partially into that same color and then add. And I'm going to go with the turquoise next. I'm kind of going darkest to lightest, or at least that's what I think I'm doing. I'm kind of mushing those together a little bit where they meet. Guess what? I don't like it. I'm going to see what happens when I mush it all together with a baby wipe. Probably going to get ugly. I like the texture that I got from that rigid wrap though. And I'm just kind of pushing and moving the paint down into that rigid wrap more, filling up the little white gaps that we're getting because of the texture. That's kind of cool. I like that better. Okay, the outside is all dry, and I just wanted to cover this. This is the front cover, I think. Yeah, I wanted to cover the inside, and I had a jelly print that I was going to put on here, and it was on deli paper, and for some weird reason it wouldn't stick, so I pulled out this piece that I did with alcohol ink on, I think it's on freezer paper, but I thought color wise it's good, so I'm going to put this down instead, and I'm just going to put matte medium inside. Then I'm going to go on top of it with the matte medium. Okay, this side is done, and I'm just taking some of that turquoise phthalo color on this card and just pulling it across the other fly page here in the front. I kind of like the way that looks. I did the same thing in the back that I did in the front, just used the card and scraped the turquoise phthalo high flow acrylic across those pages, and you can see the difference in the color because this page I had it was like a toned old book page. It was very yellowed, and I had matte medium on top of that. This one did not have any matte medium, and the page is not real yellow. So there is a difference in the look of those, which is fine because I'll do stuff on top of those. I just wanted those end pages to have some color on them. So I haven't dried those yet, so I'm going to do that now.
Okay, now for the final touch, I have some bubble wrap and distress spray stain in picket fence and faded jeans, and I am just going to spray some of each on the bubble wrap. And then I'm going to grab my fine mist sprayer with just water and wet it. That'll help those colors mix together a little bit. And then I just took my book and pressed it into the bubble wrap to pick up the color. Wasn't sure what I was going to get, but I was happy with the result. And then I just kind of tipped it and let the color run here and there a little bit. It isn't extremely wet, but you can see I'm still getting a little bit of movement, so that was good. I like that. And then just wiping up the excess overspray in water before I lay my book back down in the muck. I took that same piece and I just added some more of the spray stain. And the picket fence is, I think, the only distress spray stain that has to be mixed. It has a mixing ball in it. And then sprayed it with water. Now, if I'd have been really smart, I would have dried that front cover first, but I didn't. So I dropped it down, the back cover in there, and I just opened it so that I could press down and pick up the pigment on the back cover. This was the tricky part. Don't get your hands in the wet paint. Well, it turned out pretty good. I missed a couple spots, so I just picked up the bubble wrap and added some here and there. So while holding the wet book, I tried to clean up, and then it took a really, really long time to dry it, so I just showed you a little bit. But that's the finished product. I might do some more on top of this. I'm not quite sure, but I like the way it turned out. You can see the texture there from the rigid wrap. So I'm looking forward to working in this journal. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and in the meantime, go make some art. Bye.